I think we're just about ready to low. Aloha. My name is Mark. I'll be flying you folks around the beautiful island of Kaua'i. Tour is going to be about 50 minutes. Everybody has access to the microphones. We got the one up front, two in the back, and I do leave them on so you can ask questions. We're also making a movie. It's available after the flight. Did you folks get your safety brief? Everybody ready? All right, a little bit about myself. Originally from the Seattle area. I joined the Army in 1987. That's where I learned to fly helicopters. Got out in 2004. Happened to be stationed over in Oahu at the time, so we ended up just staying here, my family and I. 3 kids, my wife. We loved Kaua'i here for 5 years. Prior to that, the Big Island, and then before that, Oahu. So, know Kaua'i pretty well. Okay. All right, you folks ready to go?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's roll. I'm going to turn off the microphones, and we're going to make some calls and get out of here. All right, folks, here we go. Alright folks, we're going to continue our climb up to the break wall. It's right below us. This break wall marks the entrance to the harbor. You see off the right side, this is called Willy Willy Harbor, and this is the main harbor for the island of Kaua'i. So this is where all our goods are shipped in. Also where they park the cruise ships when they come into town. Right along the lengthwise section of the pier. You can also see the recreational small boat harbor down here, but look just beyond that, that's the mouth of the Hawai'ian stream. You follow it up, kind of winds its way up there, but look on the far side, I guess, or the right side of the stream now, you'll see a pond, and that pond's called the Alakoko Fish Pond, and it was built there by the early Hawaiians to give them easy access to fish a long time ago, because nobody goes beyond the reef. I just turned on the microphones for everybody, so feel free to use the microphones from this point on. A lot of movies filmed here on Kaua'i. I'll be pointing out some of the shoot locations as we make our way around the island. But right out of the gate here, I'll mention a couple of movies you folks may recall for you George Clooney fans. There was a scene in a little movie called The Descendants where George flies over from Oahu with his movie family, gets picked up in Lahui by a fellow in a Jeep. That fellow then takes them up to a point right there where the road crosses through that little notch, that saddle. They get out and look down into this beach property on the left-hand side, and they reminisce about the good times they used to have on the family property. That property behind the beach kind of being the backstory of that movie. The beach itself is private, or the property is private. It's owned by the Waterhouse family. The beach, however, just like all other beaches in the Hawaiian Islands, are considered public. There's just no way to get there via land. You know, you have to go through somebody's private land to get there, and they don't provide access. So the only way to get there is by boat. All right, we just rolled out now on a west heading, and we're traveling westbound at about 110 knots. That converts to about 120 miles per hour. Since we are flying westbound, that makes the left side of the aircraft the south shore, and the right side looking back up towards the north. The south shore, that would be the Grand Hyatt, the Sheraton, Poipu Beach, Shipwrecks, Granite Keys. Yeah, the Sheraton or the Grand Hyatt?
No, we actually are in the condos.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there's a lot of places to stay over there. Yeah, there's all kinds of condos and some other nice hotels as well, besides the big ones I just mentioned. For you Fast and Furious fans, are there any? The latest iteration, Hobbs and Shaw. They filmed about the last third of the movie right over here on the left. All this land that we're flying over now used to be cultivated with sugarcane for the most part. Sugar was the primary agricultural product produced by the island for a little more than 100 years. Towards the end of the 20th century, profitability of sugar diminished, and so folks switched away from growing sugar and began other agricultural endeavors. A lot of cattle ranching now. Also support for the biomass industry, so that's what they're doing down here. What's that? Yeah, push the button there. It's called the tree tunnel, this line of eucalyptus trees. And then the biomass trees, the eucalyptus ones you see, the dark green, yeah, those are being used to, well, what they do is they grow them for, I think it's about 10 or 15 years, and then they chip them up. They cut them and chip them up into little pieces, and they make wood pellets out of them. So they process them, and they burn them in the biomass power plant located out the right door. I don't think they burn all of them. I think they have an export. They're going to have an export, because you see these trees growing all over the island. Quite a few of them, little clumps here and there you can see over here. They used to grow albizia, but albizia is now considered invasive, and so they're trying to get rid of it. And so they don't plant albizia anymore. There's a lot of albizia growing wild on the island. For instance, if you look off our left side, see that clump right there of trees? That's all albizia. That's a little grove of albizia trees. But those are from Malaysia originally. They were brought here about 100 years ago. But the state's trying to get rid of them because they grow so fast. They outgrow everything else. And they crowd out the native vegetation. All right. Wet the whistle there. Approaching Hanapepe Valley now. We'll descend into the valley a little ways and take a look at some waterfall. You can see how wet and marshy it is up here. This is all watershed. See the fence? That fence is designed to keep out feral animals like pigs and goats and things like that, because they want to keep the water clean. This on the other side, though, this is all irrigation water. This is fenced off as well, but I don't think any of this is used for drinking water. This is called Alexander Reservoir, and they use that to irrigate the coffee. Used to be the sugar, but now the coffee.
We haven't seen any wild pigs yet.
I'm sorry?
We haven't seen any wild boars yet.
Oh, yeah.
Where are they usually at?
If you drive down to Point Poo, you usually see them alongside the road, eating grass and eating stuff, yeah. Waterfall you see coming into view off the right side is called Mano Waiopuna. That's the Hawaiian name, but it also goes by the name Jurassic Falls since the filming of the movie here in 1992, that movie, Jurassic Park. So this is where they shot the scene in the movie where the helicopter flies up the valley and lands right at the base of the waterfall where the retaining pool is, and that wall that holds back the water, that pool of water, that's where the helipad was located. They removed it after they finished filming. The helicopter you see parked down there now is Island Helicopters. That is not the original landing site in the movie. In fact, that spot there was where they built that cage, that enclosure. It was kind of a gate. Waterfalls above Mount Waiopuna, again up here called the Kahili Falls or Upper Kahili Falls, always flowing, always beautiful. I've never seen them even come close to drying up. Always, always gorgeous.
Well, there's your waterfalls, Barry.
Yep. And we're just getting started. There's more.
How much of the island is uninhabitable?
Uninhabited, I would say about 70 to 80%. It's mostly the periphery of the island that's inhabited, and people ask that question, inhabited, and then that makes me think, okay, well, what do you consider inhabited? Does uninhabited mean completely devoid of any roads, power lines, trails, and people? Or is it just rural countryside that perhaps just has cows? Would that be uninhabited? So it's kind of hard to define, but I think as a general observation, about 70% is uninhabited, and that includes most of the inner portions of the island. It's really the periphery of this island that is mostly inhabited. The people who own this property live right there, the Robinson family. There's two brothers there, Bruce and Keith Robinson, and this property has been in their family for a long time. The two brothers, they obtained the property through an inheritance. It was originally purchased by their great-grandmother. Her name was Elizabeth Sinclair, and she bought all of this land. We're flying Hanapepe Valley as well as the fields you see off our left front and Olukele Canyon. She bought all of this land after first purchasing the island of Nihihau, which is an island located right out there. You can't really see it right now because of a rain squall, but we'll probably be able to see it once we fly a little bit further to the west. She bought that island in 1864, and then later she bought all this land. They built a big, beautiful house called the Machiavelli House. It's out the right door. That house was built in the 1870s, and it's no longer occupied. It's in what's called caretaker status, which just means somebody comes out and, makes sure the roof isn't caved in or things like that. It is quite old, and so there's no electricity in that house. The more modern houses is where they live on the ridge. The story behind the family is they were originally from Scotland, and they had emigrated from Scotland to New Zealand at the request of the British Crown. They had awarded Vincent Sinclair, the patriarch of the family, lands in New Zealand as a reward for service to the Crown. He was a ship's captain in the British Royal Navy, and so they left Scotland and went to New Zealand, and they stayed in New Zealand for about 24 years, and left and came here to Hawaii, the family. Vincent Sinclair actually didn't make it. He passed away, was lost at sea actually, along with the eldest son. But the remaining members of the family did move here. The 2 remaining boys as well as the 3 daughters. And they bought that island of Nihihau and then later this property. Crossing over Olakili Canyon now. And again, this property is owned by the Robins. You might be wondering why on earth would you want to own all this land? Well, simply to have access to the water. They bought the uplands property so they could control the water. Now that's not the case anymore. Water is now controlled by the state of Hawaii. That's all changed. They don't own the water. You can't own water now. The water is actually managed for the benefit of all the Hawaiians.
Can't see the face.
How much of the island is owned by the state, actually?
Well, there's about, I believe it's about, I'd say 20%, maybe 15%. A lot of this land we're flying over is private land, even though it's not occupied. I mean, there's no development on it. A lot of it is private property. You'd be surprised at how much private property is actually here. This happens to be state land. This is all part of Waimea Canyon State Park. Waimea Canyon's getting some rain right now, so some rain that it doesn't always get. It's actually usually pretty dry in here, but it's getting some rain.
See the rainbow?
Yeah, it's pretty.
I'm going where the sun keeps shining through the pouring rain. Going where the weather suits my clothes.
We're just going to ride the ridge up here.
Sailing on summer breeze.
The road you take to come up to Waimea Canyon, have any of you been up yet?
Yeah, we were up
You
there
have, okay.
yesterday.
It's right over there. You can see the cars coming down the road right over there.
Everybody's talking at me.
Right side, if you look over there, see the waterfall streaming down out of that little side canyon? That is called the Waialae, and that's one of 3 major side canyons that form the greater Waimea Canyon. And it is that waterfall, that rushing, that flashing, flooding water that has created Waimea Canyon over time. Thousands of years of erosion creating Waimea Canyon. That's why they call this the Grand Canyon of the Pacific, albeit on a much, much smaller scale. So you see the canyon wasn't really formed so much by the rain that falls directly overhead, but rather the rain that falls a few miles off our right side. The first overlook off the left side, right over there. Pay the fee. That's kind of a new thing now. Did you stop here? Oh, it costs now to park there.
Yeah, that's where we stopped. That's where we stopped at.
You gotta put I think your credit card in a machine. And
Yeah, $5.
$5, yeah. Now that's kind of a new thing they're doing now.
This angle seems a lot better, huh? Still like 2 hours better.
Alright, look at that. Waipo'o Falls now. Let's do a little turn for the left side and then we'll turn away from the waterfall. And back to the left. crossing over one of those unofficial overlooks, the free one.
We went to those ones too yesterday.
Yeah, those are just as good, actually. I always tell everybody, if you haven't been up there yet and you want to save $5, just do the free one there.
Kind of like the safety rail myself.
Yeah, the guardrail is nice. Some of those overlooks, well, you gotta watch where you step. Alright, we're over Kaua'i State Park now. This is all part of a state park that kind of wraps around Waimea Canyon. It's the largest state park on the island. And what it's used mostly for is recreational hunting. Hunting feral pig, feral goat, and also black-tailed deer. Now, none of those animals are native to the Hawaiian Islands. They've all been brought in from different places at different times. In fact, the Hawaiian Islands are so isolated, they're considered the most isolated archipelago in the world, furthest from any major landmass. And so everything that was here prior to people coming here either had to float, fly, or swim. And so naturally it was only birds and insects and some reptiles. There was nothing else here, no large mammals. There was never a land bridge or anything like that to the Hawaiian Islands. And so they were, as far as wildlife, they were actually quite desolate. Even the plant life was really not all that varied. Wasn't until the Polynesians started coming here, and they think as early as 2, perhaps 300 AD, the first arrivals coming here, probably the Bourbons or the Marquesans, then later the Tahitians, migrating here via the wooden sailing canoes, utilizing, the celestial navigation, just like in the movie Moana. So arriving here and bringing with them the animals, the pigs, the Polynesian pigs, along with the dogs and the chickens and the rats. And then as far as plants, we have what's called canoe plants here now. And there are about 27 different varieties of canoe plants. Coconuts, bananas, sugarcane, kava, kukui nut trees, breadfruit, all of those plants brought here by the Polynesians. So some of those plants we now commonly associate with Hawaii, like coconuts. Who would have thought coconuts would have been native? But they're not. They're brought here by the Polynesians. We just flew by the Makaha tracking station off the left side. That's actually part of Barking Sands. We are now approaching the Napali coast, the Pali or Napali, which means the cliffs in Hawaii. So no cars, no roads. The only access to this side of the island is by watercraft. Here we go. Woohoo!
That is stunning.
Waterfalls over there, man. Look how tall they are.
Unbelievable.
That's about 3,000 feet from the top to the water line down here.
You have a tough job.
Okay, first beach now that you see off our right side is called Honopu. And you can see there's a rock arch that goes up over the beach. It's called the Honopu Sea Arch. And it's about 60 feet high, connects the two halves of the beach. This is where they shot scenes with Johnny Depp for Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides. Also, the Escape movie, 6 Days, 7 Nights, towards the end of the movie where Anne Hesh and Harrison Ford are being chased by the pirates. Pirates are shooting at him and they escape by running through that arch. Right side looking back towards the south now, the open ceiling sea cave. Left side beautiful view of Honopu, the rock arch, and the valley, Honopu Valley, which is also known as the Valley of the Kings. They call it that because this valley was used as a burial valley by the people who used to live along here, the Nepali tribe, part of the Nepali Moku. This beach off our left side low now was the shoot location in the 1977 version of King Kong. That was the one with Jeff Bridges, Jessica Lange, and Charles Grodin. Remember that one?
Jessica Lange, how could you forget her?
That was the one where Charles Grodin, at the end of the movie, gets stomped on by King Kong. Remember he goes like this? And superior acting skills. When I saw that, I figured, well, that's what he gets for leaving his wife for Sybil Shepherd in The Heartbreak Kid. Next beach up is called Kalalau Beach. This is where the main campground is located. It's also where the trail ends. The Kalalau Trail starts up in Kaua'i, goes for 11 miles to Kalalau. So 11 miles in and 11 miles out.
And all of these mountains have gotten so jagged just from water.
Just from erosion, yeah. A combination of ocean and rain and wind and, you know, that kind of thing.
When I fall on my knees with my face to the rising sun. Oh Lord, have mercy on me.
Let's do a turn now and a look back on the two beaches we just flew by. Keep an eye out as well for whales, but we want to do a look back. Now the water clarity is not all that great right now. You see a difference in the color in the water. That's caused by the swell. The rough conditions, what that does is kick the bottom up and creates this coloring in the water. That's just sediment suspended in the water.
Have you seen any whales yet today?
Oh yeah, I saw one way in the distance splash. But today is kind of hard to see whales because of the surface conditions of the water. Again, Kalalau Valley. The rock formations above Kalalau Beach called the Cathedrals. See the trail? This trail, for the most part, is the original Hawaiian footpath, the old Hawaiian footpath that's been here for hundreds of years. Now, of course, it's been rerouted in a couple of spots, and then it's also maintained by the state of Hawaii now, so it's been improved, but graded, in other words. But it's still pretty rugged trail. It's considered one of the most challenging recreational hikes in the United States. Even though it's only 11 miles, it's not really the distance, but rather the rugged nature of the trail. The caves you see forming along the waterline, see them? The perfectly oval-shaped caves. Most of them, they don't go back too far. There is one up here that goes back almost the length of a football field. Now that's a real football field, not a Seahawks football field, which is actually about 6 inches short. But these are called the Honolulu Sea Caves, and they are created as lava tubes, or rivers of lava that create lava tubes. Of course, we're talking thousands and thousands of years ago. Down at Kaua'i Beach, don't see much of a beach down there. It's just rocky. That's because the beach got blown out by the waves. Oh, nice big wide view now of the Napali. The two waterfalls, the two big ones, the one on the left is called Waihuakua, and the one on the right is called Hanakoa. Don't you just love these Hawaiian names? They're hard to say.
I'll give it about 20 years to learn.
How many letters are in the Hawaiian alphabet?
13. There's 13 characters, 12 letters. 13, the 13th letter is not really a letter, it's a character. They wanted to make it simple. You know, it was the missionaries that developed the alphabet for the Hawaiian language, and they didn't do it, over a short period of time. They gave it a lot of thought and study, and of course, they all had to learn the language. They had to learn how to speak Hawaiian, and then they had to go through this painstaking process of translating all the words into this alphabet, and a simplified version of the alphabet, one in which they felt would be simple enough to teach the Hawaiians how to read. Now, as it turns out, the Hawaiians adapted very, very quickly, and they weren't dumb. They just because they didn't have a written language, they were considered Stone Age, but they weren't dumb. They had excellent memory and memorization skills, and they had to, because all of their stories, all the information had to be learned through rote memorization, since they didn't have a written language. All right, coming up now on Tunnels Beach area, which is known for its snorkeling and swimming in the summertime. Summertime is the time in which it's more calm here. You don't have the big swell, typically, or the rough conditions, and so therefore it's better for swimming and snorkeling and things like that. It's also good for surfing. This is where they do quite a bit of surfing down here on the reef. Today there isn't anything like that going on in the water. It's just too dangerous. The conditions too rough right now. The community of Hawaiian off our right side now. Hawaiian, known for its celebrity homes. Pierce Brosnan, Drew Barrymore, Bette Midler, just to name a few folks. It's hard though to figure out who's who down there. I do know where Pierce Brosnan's house is, but the rest of them you got to look at the tax map. I know where Bette Midler's house is because she names all her properties here on Kauai by this and by that. And so her property in Kapa is named My Kapa. Her property in Hawaiian is called My Hawaiian. So that's the name of her LLC. I don't know if she's, I've never seen her here. The only one I've ever actually seen is Pierce Brosnan, and he actually lives here much of the year. I've never seen Drew Barrymore hanging down at Costco or anything by the meat section. None of that.
We read the wind and the sky when the sun is high. We sail the length of the seas on the ocean breeze. At night we name every star. We know where we are. We know who we are, who we are. Away, away.
Like they're taking out all the invasive mangrove. See that? Clearing out all that invasive mangrove down there. That's called Lumahai. This is Lumahai Valley, and it's owned by the Bishop Estates. You can see it's not developed. What they do is lease it out to the taro farmers. Left side as well, that's also true. So these flooded fields you see off our left side, that's mostly taro. Now, historically, this has always been an area where they've grown lots of taro. That's because this area is so well suited for taro production. Taro requires lots of water, requires a flooded field. And so you had plenty of water to do that, and what the Hawaiians would do is they would engineer these fields so one would drain from the next to the next to the next using gravity-fed irrigation, because of course they didn't have electric pumps. So they had to be quite ingenious in how they directed the water, and they did. They dug irrigation canals, they lined it with stone. They did a lot of stonework. They used a lot of stone in their building because they had a whole class of people who were dedicated to moving stone. They were called the Kaua'i or Kaua'i. Those were the stone workers. I call them stone workers. But they were the lowest class people in Hawaiian society. They had no mana. They had no power. And so they had to do all that backbreaking work. Hawaiian culture was a very stratified. It was a very class-oriented system, and it was a feudal system. You know, it was roughly based on early European history. Same thing. You had the ruling families, and then you had the kahuna class or kunihiki class. Those were the sub-chiefs, or the folks who had special skills. And then you had the commoners. They did all the fishing and the farming and things like that. And then you had the Kaua'i, the untouchables. You know, in India, I guess you would call them the untouchables. Their lives were not easy. They were relatively short. Very little vertical development or vertical movement. There was a lot of horizontal movement, and it was probably more likely you would move down rather than up. Just do a little turn at this waterfall called Namalakama Falls. Heading back down here towards the low saddle. Again, Honolulu, Princeville. Off our front, you've got Kilauea. Kilauea, you can see the little island at the tip of that blunt peninsula. That is the Kilauea National Wildlife Refuge. And that is a great place to visit if you want to learn a little bit about the native seabirds, and also even some of the inland waterfowl are represented there. Alright, turning away from the North Shore, we're going to turn up this valley, this very, very beautiful, lush green valley. This is called the Honolulu Valley. The river by the same name, this is the Honolulu River, probably the most significant river on the north shore of this river, the Hanalei River. It expands and contracts a lot though, so it's very flashy. Historically, the valley was utilized as an agricultural valley almost exclusively, which means the Hawaiians did not establish large or permanent settlements up here. And that's because the Hawaiians preferred to live on the periphery of the island. They feared the deep, dark forest. But what's interesting is you can see the abandoned agriculture. These fields you see on either side of the river, you can see them intermittently. There's another one just off our front. These are the abandoned agricultural fields left here by the early Hawaiians. Now, as the population of Kauai diminished, so did the need for the food that was grown in this valley, and so the valley became abandoned over time. Now, pretty much by the mid-1850s, 1800s, mid-1850s time frame, this valley no longer visited or occupied. It is hard to get up here, also rainy and colder up here, and so they just stopped coming up here. The population began to diminish rapidly right about mid-century due to Western diseases, and so they didn't need the food that was grown up here, and so it became abandoned. And that's how it remains today. This very beautiful, lush green valley is all public land. No trails, no roads. Most folks don't even see this part of the island unless you're on an air tour. We'll get all the way to the back of the valley and we'll cross over this ridge you see in front of us. But before we do that, look off our right front. This happens to be the north-facing side of Mount Waialeale. So remember, Mount Waialeale, roughly the center of the island. It's also the highest point, 5,243 feet. And up on top is where that rain gauge is located that measures that record rainfall. There's actually two summits up on top, Hawai'ian and Waialeale. But those two summits just mark the two extreme ends of the crater rim. And it's Hawai'ian that is slightly higher than Waialeale. So that altitude I gave you was actually the altitude for Hawai'ian. Oh, crossing over the ridge now.
May it be an evening star shines down upon you. May it be.
Hang on.
Will be true. You walk alone. Oh, how far you are from home.
Approaching the crater now. Oh, you can actually see the crater rim goes around a little more than a half circle, opens up into this V-cut, you can see, but the crater actually extends out behind us, and it's quite large. How pretty this is.
May it be the shadows call will fly away.
Go ahead. Teresa, you were going to say something and then you didn't. You were like, and then...
When you just took us through that little crater right there.
Yeah.
That was just beyond.
I know, I've never seen anything like it before in my life. Yeah, I've flown all over the world. I've been all these different places my whole life. I come here and I fly and see that, and I was just like, my goodness, I've never seen anything. That's like one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. And I never get tired of looking at it. It changes, of course, you know. It's always a little different. It doesn't always look the same. Kaua'i crater off our right side. It's a little hard to see, but it's this low, broad-based hill. You see out the right door, and then you see that concave bowl shape there? That's called Kaua'i crater. Papa.
Everybody's talking at me.
Approaching Twin Lakes now. All these fields in front of us used to be sugarcane, but now it's mostly cattle ranching. It's all beef cattle. No dairy. And then you can see the eucalyptus over there. See that? More eucalyptus over here. That's called the South Fork of the Wailua River.
Only the shadows of their eyes. I'm going where the sun keeps shining through the pouring rain. Going where the weather suits my clothes. Banking off of the northeast winds, sailing on summer.
So South Fork of the Wailua, you've got Kaua'i and the Wailua town, Wailua house lots. Also the mountain you see over there, that's called the Sleeping Giant. So the real name is No, or Nounou, No. But everybody calls it Sleeping Giant. That's where the trail goes up to the top. Off our right side, of course, that's Lahui. You've also got the Tesla solar farm. That solar farm is number 4. There's 5 large solar panel farms on the island. So big push for solar here on Kauai. You won't see the wind turbines. That's because of the native bird population. Alrighty, folks, I do have to turn off the microphones as we enter the controlled airspace for Lahui. We'll be landing in just a couple of minutes, and I do want to thank everybody for flying with me today. Once again, my name is Mark. You can make comment inside the gift shop there. There are some computers you can comment on, or you can handwrite your comments on the little comment cards. So handwrite me a little note, let me know what you thought of the tour. I do read and appreciate all those comments, so thank you. Once again, the microphones are off. I had to turn them off because of the controlled airspace. We'll be landing in about a minute now.
I won't let you leave my love behind. No, I won't let you leave. I won't let you leave my love behind.
This used to be the airport right down here. Where the airstrip was right there. Alright, we're just going to hover taxi over to the pad. Once we touch down, you can remain seated. We're going to do a little shutdown on the engine. We'll cool the engine down first before we shut down. Once the blades have stopped turning, the ground staff will approach the aircraft. They'll get your doors. They'll place the yellow stools. You can exit over there by the blue box. Once again, thanks everybody, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your stay here on Kauai. Be safe out there. And mahalo. Thank you. We'll turn this off. Turn that back on.